Welcome to WagerTalk. Last call, as you guys can tell, I am ready for this college basketball slate. Make your free throws. I've been betting a lot of first half plays because I'm kind of sick of those kids not making their free throws down the stretch. No Art DeCesar from the Westgate Superbook today, but don't worry. He sent me a beautiful long text message about what their needs, some chart plays, and of course the public sides of the day. Gianni the Greek's going to pop in about 5 minutes or less to discuss some of these games with you, see what he's seen from behind the computer screen on his end. And then, of course, Mark Zinno is going to be joining us. And Mark is going to be answering all of your questions. So if you have a question for myself, for VR, for Mark, make sure you guys drop it in the chat. That's how this works. We're going to take it up until tip-off. If you guys keep asking questions, the questions go away. I'm going to sit in front of my couch and watch college basketball all day. All right, from Art DeCesar, he does apologize for not being here. First and foremost, he said they have a lot going on. They're a little short-handed, and they are working on getting those Super Bowl props out. But he will be back next week. All right, sharp plays that they saw. They saw a sharp group take Gonzaga at 22.5. That line is now currently sitting at 25 on the odds logic screen. Iona minus 3.5, now minus 5. Minnesota was a 5-point underdog, now a 4-point underdog. California minus 9, now minus 11. Vanderbilt saw some sharp action, plus 3.5, now down to plus 2. So the public sides, starting off this morning, Michigan State won this afternoon, Duke. And of course, this evening, UConn's going to get all of the public love. I will be on Xavier. I already bet that one minus 1.5. A sharp group that they respect played 4 games this morning. Hofstra minus 6, Georgetown plus 1.5, Idaho minus 2.5, and Montana minus 2.5. I'll go back over those again here if you guys are late to the show, so you guys can catch those before tip-off. As I mentioned, we're going to bring in VR, Gianni the Greek, Vegas runner, the Greek gambler, the man of many names. He's going to give us a look behind that computer screen. We're going to chat with him, see what's going on this beautiful Saturday. What's going on, VR?
Busy day, college basketball. But what I'm seeing a lot of, Kel, is parlays into tomorrow's NFC and AFC championship game. People do that all the time. They try to get ahead of a bet that they know they're going to place because most have already made their decision. There's only 2 games. The line's been up all week. They've read all the previews. They've watched all the stuff that they need, that they respect out there. And, they more or less have made their decisions. And I see that all the time. In fact, they were already doing it for Monday's national championship with Ohio State. We talked about that earlier in the week on WagerTalk today, how I thought they were going to be on Buffalo because I was seeing so many teasers with Buffalo. And even though it was plus EV, going through 3 and 7, it was still coming from a lot of square accounts. No disrespect, but most of those guys really don't care what they're teasing through. They're just teasing the sides they think are going to win or that they like to bet. So I thought we would start to see that Buffalo money. And as we approach 24 hours to kickoff, you're starting to see that come in. You're seeing good two-way action. Even on the Eagles, all the early action, Kel, was Eagles, Philadelphia, which kind of made sense. The line moving up 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, even some 6.5. So if you did like the dog, there's no reason to rush. You were seeing all that early money going on the favorite. Now, though, that it's settled everywhere and it was around that 6, a couple 6.5s, you started to see the Washington money come in from the recreational bettors. A lot of Washington money line bets as well. So this AFC, NFC National Conference Championships, it's a good thing to be a bookmaker, I think. I don't think they're going to end up with a ton of risk. I don't think they're going to end up really needing a side all that bad. I expect them to have good balance and two-way action. And I think the line kind of reflects that. You're not seeing any big moves. And real quickly, not to go long on the game that's tomorrow, because we'll probably touch on that tomorrow. But the sharp guys that I talk to, every single one of them, Kel, that I asked before I fired my 5% play, before I fired my stuff and for the package, because I hadn't seen them on my accounts. I said, have you seen either of these in the accounts? They said yes. But with the caveat, bro, the lines are so tight this late. The first guy I sent it to, his exact text back was, yeah, Ace, I bet that too. But the lines are so tight this late. Do we really have an edge? Like he put a question mark, LOL. Like, do we even have an edge in these games? Because the lines are so tight this late. So even the wise guys know that this late, it's in the props, it's in the team totals, it's in second halves. That's where they're going to make the real money. Just like the Super Bowl. They put very little on the side, very little on the total, and 90% of their bankroll for that game will be on the props. And I think you're going to see a lot of more props from the betting syndicates tomorrow once the public starts pushing some of those lines up. They do it in the Super Bowl. You know that very well. They come in, they take the unders after those overs get bet by recreational bettors. And the books don't mind giving the best of it to the wise guys because they have so much risk on the other side. If anything, they're helping them balance some of that risk. So it's a good opportunity to find a ton of value. You don't have to be early to the party. That's the good thing when it comes to championship games, when it comes to, World Series, when it comes to NBA championship, Super Bowl, because it's so overwhelming, the recreational money, that they're not even paying attention to what we're doing. They don't even care.
I love it. Those are the few times that the public money just is completely infiltrated the entire market. And well, we've seen it with the Kansas City Chiefs the last few years. It doesn't seem to matter. They're probably going to be betting them on Sunday. All right, Viera, let's get into this massive college basketball slate. There is so many great games, top 25 matchups, etc. But what my question is what are you guys seeing that's like way under the radar, right? Where are some of the value plays that you think of are for today? Because I've got my long list that I've still got to narrow down. I'm like, I surely cannot fire on 11 games today, right? Like I've been running hot in college basketball. And I haven't been all that selective, right? I had a really good shot to go 4-0 last night, went 3-1, late bucket. If you bet Washington late, hey, congrats to you. You got the cover. If you bet, the other side late, it was a bad line. So I'm kind of just sitting back and I have mine broken down in times, right? Because either you got to be first or you got to be right. And I mentioned Art to Caesar saying, hey, look, Michigan State's very public. And so I bet it because I didn't want to miss it after the show. And as soon as I popped on, Joe Ranieri said, one of Rutgers' best players is out for today. And I'm like, come on, man. Like this is the kind of stuff where from a betting standpoint for college basketball, do you think it's best to get the best of the number or best to get the best of the information?
Best to get the best of the information, unless you're a heavy volume person. Like if you're going to fire on those 11 plays, then you just want to get out ahead, get the best numbers you can, knowing long-term, because you're able to do that over and over again, you will make money. You're a mathematical certainty to make money as long as you balance risk correctly. But when you're not firing that kind of volume, then I think it's better to isolate, to narrow down those spots that you think give you the best EV positions even after the line moves. Because again, just because these guys back off doesn't mean that all the value's gone. It just simply means they got the money down that they wanted to get down. And that's why a lot of times I always say you can still take the second number, the third number. It doesn't mean you're placing a bad bet. That's necessarily not the case. So especially if you're a handicapper like you, where you really follow the games, you watch the games, you know the teams, you follow the teams, like you're better off waiting for the information and narrowing it down. I'm doing a lot more of that this year with lower volume. But prior to this, my only goal was get out ahead of the number. If I could have a -3 in my pocket and it closes 4.5, 5, I'm gold. I don't care how it ends up because I'm not going to watch it anyway. I'm going to have 22 bets. So what am I going to do? Watch one game? That could be winning. I could be losing the other 21. So it really doesn't matter. Or I could be losing that one and winning the other 21. So when you do it that approach, dude, just throw it at everything that you see a little bit of value. But you have to have such a huge bankroll to do that. And the swings are so enormous that most recreational players just can't deal with it. And that it makes sense. Why should they be able to deal with it? Most don't have the bankroll to have those kind of swings. And most don't even have the time to get out ahead of the market like that. They have other responsibilities. They have jobs. They have families. They're not sitting and looking at 3 screens like you and I do most of the time. So I think your approach is a lot better. Narrow down your top 10, top 11 like you did. Then dig into the information Saturday. And if you ain't first, that doesn't mean that the value's gone. Place a good bet, and that's all that matters. And more times than not, I would bet that even after you bet, the line's still moving a little your way. Like you're still getting some CLV more times than not, because you're not going to just throw your money out on anything because you think it's going to win. You're betting it because you think the number's still off. And as long as you have that approach and you're not just trying to pick the winner, but you are actually paying attention to the line. Because listen, if it not to go long, but if it opens -13 and you like the favorite and it goes to -17.5, and all of a sudden you shouldn't still like the favorite unless there was an injury, unless there's another reason. Like how off could the Vegas books be on that type of game? Like, should they be 4.5, 5 points off? More times than not, that's not the case unless you have Dunahee, reffing. That's not going to happen where the line moves that much, where the line really moves like that. And the opposite's still going to happen. More times than not, you're getting in too late. You're buying, Bitcoin at the top. You're selling at the bottom, and we know long-term that's just not going to end up well. And I think most should do it exactly how you're doing it, and that's why you've had success with it in college basketball. Don't change that up. Just narrow that 11 down and fire.
All right, well, that's what we're going to do right after this show, and I'll be sure to tweet that out. VR, we have a question really quick from David. Am I desperate? I'm desperate. North Carolina State or SMU? I may be down worse than Trent if I lose another game. Ooh. I didn't call Trent out, but he definitely mushed my Washington play last night. That was a rough one, but I digress. VR, have you seen anything on NC State SMU? I have not. I'll be honest with you. The ACC takes a back seat for me.
The only thing I ask from, if you guys can going forward, especially a day like this, throw in a bet number, because I don't even see that game on my board. I'm just being, it's at the first game on the board. Okay, that was easy. Nothing at all. Two-way action, nothing sharp on the side, nothing sharp on the total. His opinion's probably better than mine. Gun the head, I'd lay the points with SMU. Like, if gun the head, I'd lay the points. Just from how I see in the slight line movement, seeing the accounts that are on NC State compared to SMU, but it's not a game where I feel any confidence in. Your opinion, the name's still not up there, who asked that question is probably better than mine. But again, just from what I see, I'd lay the favorite. I'd take SMU minus the 3.
SMU just got their doors blown off at home Wednesday, I believe. So I can see them bouncing back here in the spot. VR, let's rattle through real quick what you've got on the docket today, and then we can take a couple more questions from the audience.
All right. Here's some obscure college basketball sides that we bet. First, the extra added game, 306-598, Morgan State. Morgan State minus 9.5, Morgan State minus 10. In fact, they even buy, I'm going to share this with you, on the 10, they're willing to lay the 20 cents to get it to 9.5. Because they think it's worth minus 121, 122. So if anytime they think that they're even saving a penny, they should be laying, 11 cents instead of 10, they're going to lay the 10 cents to get the half point. So keep that in mind. And then regular board, 632, Akron, minus 7, 642, Pennsylvania, plus 5, 661, Rhode Island, LaSalle, over 154. I also saw, I saw Gonzaga minus 22.5, but that's one of those where they know the line's going to move in Gonzaga's favor. I never trust those because I always think after the public jumps on, when it gets to 25, if it does, you're going to see some take back later in the day. I also saw Hofstra at minus 6, and I saw Vanderbilt at plus 4, plus 3.5, and I don't think anybody took the 3. And also, real quickly, these are the most heavily one-sided public sides. Like I'm going to just share the ones where I'm seeing no sharp action on them, and it's very one-sided. Pittsburgh over Syracuse. That move, I do not think it's very sharp. I think there's a lot of public money from looking at these accounts behind Pittsburgh. None bigger than, believe it or not, Providence against Georgetown. And what did Art give us? He gave us Georgetown as a sharp play. So you have the sharps versus the squares in that one. Because again, I'm looking at over 85% of the square accounts that bet this game are on the Providence side, and the couple sharp accounts are on Georgetown. Move down to Michigan State. One-sided of public action. And seeing that line move a little bit, I kind of think, again, I'm not just going to fade the public, but I thought Rutgers as a home dog offered up a little bit of value. Art also gave Michigan State as one-sided. So it's one-sided everywhere, man. It's one-sided with the on-screen books. It's one-sided with the off-screen books. So if you ever want to go opposite the public, you probably shouldn't do that just because it's opposite the public, because the books are getting 11 to 10. If you're not getting 11 to 10, fading the public's not going to make you rich. But you probably don't want to be jumping on a game where everybody's on the same side and the line's not reflecting that. Move down to the later games. Sorry. Just want to make sure I shared the best information possible. Let me pull up the later games. Kentucky against Vanderbilt. Seeing nothing but Kentucky money. New Mexico against UNLV, and I saw some sharp UNLV action. Wasn't syndicate money, but some sharp accounts, some guys that do real well in college basketball. You guys know there's some specialists out there. They don't bet enough money to really move the screen, but they're very good at what they do. And that's one of those games where sharp account took UNLV, and there's so much New Mexico money. And then a little later down, Oregon against Minnesota. That line's moving opposite, not reflecting the action. Central Florida against TCU. And finally, later in the day, this one, Kansas against Houston. I mean, it's a pick 'em. I was going to say home dog, but it's not really a home dog now. And finally, Xavier. And that's pretty much it. San Diego State against Nevada, that's late. But when it's that late, I don't really put too much stock in it because things could change. We have that many hours, and just because the early public money is on San Diego State, later in the day, you may get enough Nevada money to make it not a big decision. But the earlier ones, I would really pay attention to because there's a lot of overwhelming money in those accounts.
Yep, I'm getting those in right now. Don't mind me. I'm just putting in some bets live with VR. This is what we do here on Last Call. Everybody is getting their last minute bets in. We got 40 minutes till tip off. We'll take a couple questions. We'll bring in Mark Zinno. Pop those up on the screen. I apologize because I'm on my laptop at my dad's house, so I don't have them. B Daddy. He likes the under 149.5 in Michigan State versus Rutgers. Obviously, that is a neutral site game at Madison Square Garden. VR, I know you mentioned Michigan State, very public. Have you seen anything in regards to the total?
On the total, let me look real quick. Let me just click that. Over. Nothing sharp, but seeing public going over in that game, and the line hasn't reflected that. It's still sitting at 149.5. So I think B Daddy is on the right side there, going with the under. He's definitely going against the recreational bettors that are betting this one over like they have tomorrow's newspaper. Doesn't mean it's a winner, but I do think I agree with you. I think that's the right side.
Awesome stuff. One more question here on the screen as our producer pops it up. And then we'll let VR go. VR, tell me what's going on in the steam room tomorrow.
Tomorrow, we're going to be going starting next week. We're going to do it on Saturday, except for Super Bowl Sunday, obviously, because there's just so much to cover on Saturday with MMA, with college basketball, and I want to be able to give them that actionable information. But we will be going over, like I always, week to date, year to date results, going over the money management approach that I think is best. And more importantly, digging deep into those NFL games, both games. We will be getting a lot of props. A lot of those props I'm not able to release to subscribers because they're time sensitive, meaning the line moves pretty quickly and some are not even readily available at every book. They find some obscure props here or there where I could tell them, listen, if you have a DK account, find this number. This is what they're banging. If you have a FanDuel account, bang this one. This is what they're betting. So join us in the steam room tomorrow. NFC Championship, AFC Championship. I will be sharing a ton of information and a ton of props as well. I hope to have a handful of them already in the back end that I could share for last call. It's a big day tomorrow, man. I'm really excited for it.
I love it. Real quick, last question was just on the screen. Rotation number 705. Good thing I have my odds logic screen open. Make sure you guys send your rotation numbers because all we have is just massive amounts of college basketball, and it's really tough to find these games. He wants to talk about the Drake game. They are playing Missouri State. 7.5 is the opener, up to 8, even a 9 at Pinnacle right now. VR total 120, 119.5.
Give me Missouri State. Fade in that line move. Give me Missouri State or nothing at all. That's the side I lean a little bit, but definitely under. The problem is the line's already moved a little bit. Sit back because it's not till a later game, and I'm already seeing the recreational accounts over. That one actually sticks out. It's 100% over from the recreational. There's not even one recreational account that bet that one under. So if that keeps going that way, if that money keeps coming in, I don't know if it's a TV game or not, rest assured, you'll get a better number. And even from the guys that maybe, I don't know if it opened 122.5, I'm not really looking at it. And if it dropped down to 119.5, 118.5, or what have you, even those groups, you'll see, they'll come back and buy it a little bit the other way. You'll see that resistance. It happens all the time, especially with college basketball totals, especially with NBA totals. Not as much on the sides, but on the totals, rest assured, it usually never just goes in one direction. It usually gets some resistance and bounce back. So I would sit back a little bit if you agree with me on the under and maybe get a little better number than it sits at right now.
Awesome stuff from VR. He is the best, and we will see him tomorrow here on Wager Talk's Last Call, as well as his Steam Room tomorrow. That is for his premium subscribers. You guys want to go wt.buzz/VR to get his premium plays, and then you can get all access to the Steam Room as well. All right, let's bring in Mark Zinno. We got 37 minutes until tip-off. And so if you guys have a question, we're going to give you an answer. I'm sitting on a really tall stool. Mark Zinno must be sitting on a really short stool because I look so much taller than he does right now.
Let me see if I can fix this. Now you got me all. There we go. I had to shake my whole desk in doing so. Okay.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah, I'm literally, Mark, if you can see my setup at my dad's.
I know. I was going to say, why do you look like you're in a hostage crisis situation? Like, what's going on?
Because I'm in northern Florida right now, freezing my ass off. I'm sitting on a bar stool, and I have my laptop on a bucket. I am not lying. I'll send you a picture of the setup. It's quite fun, and I'm using the window for lighting.
Maybe your dad was trying to put you through some, hard times training. I mean, he and I think alike like that. He's trying to get you ready. So maybe it's like some
Listen, we do have a hog feed this afternoon, so I'm going to do all the hillbilly shit today. Everybody, just bear with me. Listen, I love coming up here, but it is a little more primitive for a technological standpoint. So just remember, I'm here for you guys. So that's why you need to give me a thumbs up, a like, because I could just say, please, Joe Ranieri or Dan Alexander, can you guys cover for me today so I can go see my poor old dad? No, I'm here for you guys. Good morning, MJM0863. Let's get right to it. Over or under of both games and your side for both. I'm guessing he wants to talk about the AFC NFC Championship game.
Oh, tomorrow,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to save that question for tomorrow because this is a college basketball show now. I'm sorry. It's how this works. I want to talk about college basketball, Mark. I have 11 games I need help narrowing down. Let's talk about some of these ones that go off sooner than later. Let's hit some of these top 25 matchups. Oh, there we go. Daryl Turner. He wants to talk about the Tennessee game in regards to the total. Tennessee, 5.5-point underdog. Yeah. I think I'm going to take him +3 in the first half, Mark. I love Tennessee and how they come out really tough. And then I hate how they sandbag it every second half. You never get 40 minutes from this team. You just don't.
Listen, Tennessee is a much different team on the road than they are at home. It's particularly defensively. Like, if you watch them defensively at home, I don't know what it is about being in Knoxville, but I had the first half under with them Mississippi State early in the week, and it didn't even sweat. Like, they didn't even get to 55, and I had 66 or whatever it was. Anyway, so, they're just different on the road. Look, I think the total from a standpoint, the over will correlate to Auburn. I'm not excited about laying 6.5 with Auburn, whatever the number is, but I think they win the game. I don't think Auburn wants to get into this slow down, muck it up, rock fight here with Tennessee. That's not going to benefit them. I think they get out and run. Look, the matchup between these two teams last year in Knoxville, I think it was 92-84 was the final. So Auburn is going to push the pace here, I think. I lean over on this one 100%. I think this is a spot where Auburn sort of dictates the pace at home. I think Tennessee can stay within a number, Kelly. But again, Tennessee is not immune from playing faster games that are high scoring. And if you look at their games in conference play this year, they've scored 70 in 4 of 6 conference games and 68 in the one last time out against Mississippi State, which was never even close. So they didn't have to push the pace offensively. So the other game was Florida, where they just, didn't bring any of their game, not their A game, B game, C game, or D game. They brought their F game. So I think this one's fast paced. I think this one goes over.
All right, little over action for that one. Lewis wants to know, what do you like Iowa State? Let's check out this current line. Let me get the odds. Let me get this odds logic screen open on my phone, guys.
10.5, somewhere in that range.
Ooh, 2 p.m. Eastern tip-off, 9.5. Arizona State, 145.5. Listen, here's my thing. Here's my thing about the Cyclones. You just mentioned Tennessee and Knoxville. The Cyclones and Ames are just a force to reckon with, right? Yep. And it's not that they play poorly on the road. I just don't know if I'm willing to risk laying that many points with this team on the road here. And I now have to look and see who they're playing next. They're staying in Arizona after Arizona State going to play Arizona.
Honestly, look, this is a stay away from me, okay? Because part of me feels like Iowa State can blow out anybody, right? Like they just have that level of capability. Arizona State, I played on them against West Virginia and got it as 9-point dogs after West Virginia had beaten Iowa State. And so it was a great situational spot. Arizona State has to make threes. That is what you're relying on right now. Like, if they don't make their threes, and they're much better doing it at home than they are on the road, but Iowa State's a fantastic defensive team. And the problem is that Iowa State just flat out scores. Like, the problem with this here is, and this is why I don't trust Arizona State, this can easily be a 5 or 6 point game at half and watch Iowa State just run away with it in a second. It could be 5 or 6 points with 4 minutes left and watch Iowa State run away and win by 12. Like, that's my fear here because, again, when you get to a spot where Arizona State is forced to make shots, I don't necessarily trust their offense here. What I will do is cross my fingers and sort of from a future perspective, hope Iowa State blows out Arizona State. And this way they can get a bigger number and I can play Arizona, who is a much better team, against them on the second half of this trip out west for the Cyclones. But to answer the question, I probably would never lay it with Iowa State here. I'd only take Arizona State. I'm going to pass, but I would only play Arizona State or pass.
I agree with Mark on that one. Arizona State was on my very, very long list, but did not make it. I'm still in the process of narrowing some of this down. Hey, look, it's Brian Powers' buddy. Thanks, Jonathan. I bet that makes Mark feel very good. These questions are always the best.
Morning
All right, here we go. MJM, since I avoided his NFC AFC question, wants to know about the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight. Mark, I don't even follow the NBA until the playoffs. When I worked for NBA TV, I had to follow the regular season. I love the NBA playoffs. I feel like there's so much value in betting them. But until then, I just sit back. Like, call me in April.
No, here's the thing. Listen, I've talked about this on the Morning Wager with Brian Power this whole week, right? Which it is set up pretty incredible for the Cavs here. So the Cavs on Wednesday were in Houston and lost a gut punch heartbreaker game to the Rockets where Darius Garland missed 2 of 3 free throws at the line to lose by 1, right? They have a night off. Then they play the lowly Sixers last night. We on the Morning Wager bet on the Sixers last night, taking 10.5. They come out and outright win the game. This is a money spot to absolutely hammer the Cleveland Cavaliers because guess what? To these younger teams, Kelly, in the NBA, it's not like this isn't like LeBron and Steph who are going to just dribble it out for 82 games and say, we'll see in the postseason. For these younger teams, guess what? They want to win every game possible. Go back to the Cavs and Thunder matchup we saw last week where the Cavs won the first game at home. What happened? They go to Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City pounded them next. This is the final meeting between Houston and Cleveland. They lost the first one. They've lost 2 in a row. They're laying a short number here. The Rockets defense on the road, nowhere near as good as it is at home. I would absolutely hammer Cleveland and lay the 3.5 here. And plus, guess what? You know what the Cavs haven't done all year long? Lose 3 in a row. So there's that.
Touche. All right, Mark Zinno, you can catch him with Brian Power on the Morning Wager every single weekday here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. It doesn't matter if you're on the YouTube channel or if you're on the TikTok or if you're on Instagram or you're on X. If you guys have a question, drop it in the chat. Louise wants to know, do you like Oakland? Let me open up my odds logic screen because you guys are not following the directions and giving me rotation numbers. Rotation number 651. Oakland is playing Bobby Moe. They're a 2-point underdog, 136, Mark.
I know that Robert Morris plays slow. They are not like I mean, their defense is bad. That's the problem with Robert Morris, right? Like it's hard for me to back a team that gives up over 73 points a game. Oakland here is not a great shooting team. I don't really dive into the Horizon that much. Every now and then we'll look to fade Doug Gottlieb in Green Bay because they're god awful and one of the worst teams in the country. And Cleveland State is a class of that conference this year. No real feel on this, guys. I just, the Horizon isn't my baby as much. So I'd probably kind of be steering you in the wrong direction if I tried.
That is fair. I think we can only focus on so many conferences. I obviously love the SEC, Big 10, and Big 12. Little Mountain West action as well. Happy to see that VR had mentioned UNLV. A couple of my buddies just texted me, hey, are we going to back UNLV? Thomas wants to stay in the association, though. Let's talk about the San Antonio Spurs versus the Indiana Pacers.
I mean, look, a kind of early tip here going off at 12, which is 11 o'clock Texas time. I mean, my first instinct would say play the under, just because I don't think anybody's going to have a whole bunch of fresh legs in this thing. What's going on if they have it? Oh, this is the Paris game. That's right. It's the second half of the Paris game. That's why. Okay, so let me reset here. San Antonio won the first game in Paris here. Wemby had a big night in front of the home crowd. They scored 140. do the Pacers come back in this thing? I don't know. Look, maybe we're at the point right now where we can resign to the fact that the Pacers making an Eastern Conference Finals run last year was more of an aberration than a mark that they're a really good team. I'm not betting against the Pacers here in this spot. I would take the 1.5 of just Pacers, Spurs money line rather. I don't care if it's the back-to-back here. I think the Spurs are the better team.
Fair enough. I did not even realize they were playing a tournament in Paris. Yeah. So good catch by Mark Zinno. Clint Farrar, any thoughts on Texas A&M and Texas? Both teams off ugly wins. We got to back Texas here. This is the spot to finally back them, except I do not trust them, Mark Zinno. This is a game I actually just bet over at the Hard Rock. I just laid a 0.5 point in the first half with the Texas Longhorns. I did have to lay minus 115 over there. They kind of drive me crazy with some of their juice. But this is a spot where I think Texas comes out, and we know exactly what we're going to get them for at least the first half.
Here's my issue with this game. Yes, the spot screams Texas, and I even had a conversation with Brian Power about it. Here's the rub that you have to remember. It's the second game back in the lineup for Wade Taylor of A&M, and they are a completely different team with him in the lineup. They got that sneak win at Ole Miss last time out there on the second, half of road games here in a rivalry spot. So I don't know if I want to take A&M. I would definitely lean Texas. I just need to see another iteration or two of A&M with Wade Taylor back in the lineup because he's their everything, right? He's their best player, one of their leading scorers. I mean, he's just the guy that makes everything go for the Aggies. So I'm going to stay off this game. I agree with Clint. I think the spot is all about the Longhorns here, but I just want to see a couple of more injections, so to speak, of what A&M is offensively now that they have Wade Taylor back in the lineup.
Very, very cautious words there from Mark Zinno. I say, don't care. I'm firing. Thank you, Texas, for finally making up for a couple of those choke jobs that you provided me with earlier in the season. Yeah. I've been keeping really good tabs on a couple of these teams, Mark, and I feel like I've kind of nailed down when the spots to back them are. Let's talk about another spot that I played while we're waiting on some questions in the chat. Let's talk about Houston, Kansas here. Another really good matchup in the Big 12. We've seen this one kind of all over the place, right? Kansas now just a 1-point underdog. Houston first half, our good friend Hakeem Prophet put me onto them probably 18 months ago, right? And we've been betting them ever since. And even when it feels like Houston looks like they're sandbagging it, next thing you know, they're up 20. They're kind of like that Iowa State team. They're able to blow teams out, and those are the types of teams I'm willing to lay points with. The problem is Houston does tend to get those big leads and then sit on them.
Yeah, interesting here too, and it's just worth noting. What is Kansas on a run of like 13 straight unders? Is it 14 straight? Some insane number.
We're really close to that, yes. They've been printing like under money all season.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane how much that the odds makers haven't adjusted on this team when it comes to the totals and just make them a lot lower, especially now that they're playing a team like Houston, who is so incredibly defensive-minded in this whole thing that, maybe you just look to a first half under here, but and be willing to sweat out a 59, in the first half. But nonetheless, I would full game. I'd take Kansas here at home. I can't get off of their shooting, right? They're just so darn good at it, especially at Fog Allen. And if you've ever been to that building, I think you have, Kelly.
Unfortunately, I have.
Yeah, I know that's right. Yeah, I called a game there many, many years ago. But they're just really tough to beat there at Fog Allen. And Houston kind of, after 11 straight wins, feels like it's about time that they're due for a loss. And if they're going to do it, it's probably going to be on the road. I mean, look, they only beat UCF last time out on the road by 1, maybe starting to signal that those road games are the spots to play against the Cougars.
Yeah, Big 12 spots, very tough on the road to win. Probably why my Kansas State Wildcats are favored today over West Virginia. It's going to be really interesting. But here's what I will say, going just to circle back on that Houston-Kansas game. I like Houston in the first half. I agree with you. I do like Kansas to get the win there. Bill Self just called out all of the student section, said these kids are not what they used to be. They're not as loud, et cetera, et cetera. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that home court a little turned up today, especially there in the second half. All right, any more questions in the chat, please drop them in. We've got 23 minutes till tip-off. I still have a couple of other selections I need to narrow down. Let's talk about the Georgia Bulldogs, Mark. I have a good friend that's an assistant coach over there. Used to be a coach at K-State, great guy. And so I've really enjoyed, since I moved to the South and he left Florida to Georgia, I've really enjoyed watching this team progress. I saw them last year at Baja Mar. They were absolute hot garbage. And I thought, oh boy, this coaching tenure is going to be short. But this year, they've really seemed to turn it up a notch. Now, yes, they've had a couple of really stupid losses, but I like this Georgia team in the underdog role. Talk to me about Georgia today. That one tips off at 3:30 Eastern. I'm on the fence whether I'm wanting to get involved with them today or not.
I mean, look, I think this is way too many points for the Gators to be laying, especially against a Georgia team that's lost 3 in a row. Like, think of Georgia's last 3 games. On the road in Knoxville, they had a lead at halftime, and ended up losing by 18 over Tennessee. They lose a 2-point gut punch loss to Auburn at home, and then they have a gut punch loss on the road at Arkansas for the Razorbacks' first SEC win. We had the Hogs that night. Thank you. So I think Georgia is going to be able to keep this thing close. I expect a ton of pace in this game and it to be a very, very high scoring. I think last year, let me go back. I think last year these two teams played to 102-98 final, but it was like 98-98 or 90-90 rather at the end of regulation. It was insane. It was just a high scoring, non-defensive up and down battle. I think you get more of the same here. And Georgia, in this spot here, absolutely needs a win. Like, it feels like you're going to get a really good effort from the Bulldogs. The problem here is, Kelly, and I would take the Bulldogs, but if you look at their schedule coming up, what an ultimate sandwich spot their next game is. They have Florida on the road today. They get South Carolina at home, and then they're at Alabama over the course of the next week. So, I'm kind of in that spot again where I'm like, maybe it's best to lay off here, try to play them at home, depending on the number, and look at the sandwich spot there before they have to go out on the road to get smoked by Alabama. But I agree. Way too many points here for Florida.
But let's talk about Florida, right? So Florida, about 6 weeks ago, John Murray said, hey, guess what? The Westgate's going to let you parlay futures. And I said, boom, circle me in for the Ravens Super Bowl. Well, that ended up being a loser, but I did get 40-1 on the Florida Gators. And then they proceeded to go on an absolute tear, right?
Yep.
Then I had Mizzou plus 10.5 there in Gainesville. They weren't supposed to win that game outright. I had $0 on the money line. And I think that a little part of the Florida Gators got exposed, if you will. And I think we saw that versus South Carolina the other night. There's Florida laying a ton of points on the road. I wussed out and left South Carolina off my card.
Well,
I do think I'm proud of you. But they probably should have won that game, but that's a whole nother argument itself. But you mentioned Georgia in the tough stretch. Florida, I think, is kind of starting to – I don't know if they peaked too early. I don't want to know if I want to say that yet, but they're starting to kind of unravel, if you will.
I mean, listen, they have after Georgia, they're at Tennessee, and that's the problem with laying it here. It's a look-ahead spot to number 6 Tennessee. So I'm not – again, I'd take Georgia in the points here. They're home against Vanderbilt, rivalry game here, and Vanderbilt might be good enough to – they're probably a top 30, 35 team, Vanderbilt. I don't think that they are top 25, but they're pretty darn close to being a ranked team at this point in time. So Vanderbilt's going to be a really, really tough game for them. And then after that, they got 2 more ranked opponents, at number 1 Auburn and at number 14 Mississippi State. So you're going to find out what Florida's made of here over the course of these next 2 weeks. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And if they struggle here against Georgia, they're going to walk into Knoxville and probably get smoked, especially with what Tennessee did to them last time. It could be a very rough stretch here for the Gators coming up, but I'm not laying 10.5 points with Florida today.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Georgia Bulldogs in the first half. Mark, I just decided I'm putting that bet in right now. All right, so we already kind of talked about Houston, Kansas. Let's see if there's any more questions in the chat. Speaking of Mizzou, what do we think about first half with how they start every game? Sean, ding, 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 ding. They're on the top of my list. I have not bet Mizzou yet. Here's my problem. I bet against Mizzou with Texas. I took Texas in the first half. And I had my buddy, you always bet against Mizzou. I'm like, what? I just took them in Gainesville. What are you talking about? I will say Dennis Allen's team is a little bit of a roller coaster for me, and not getting enough consistency from them is frustrating. What are your thoughts on this game? Should I get involved? Should I be laying the 3.5 with Mizzou here against a ranked opponent?
I think Missouri's a little overvalued. I don't think they're a top 25 team. So I don't want to bet them as a favorite. Now, I get that they're home. Ole Miss has now lost 2 games by a combined 3 points. Back-to-back game. 4 points. 3 to Mississippi State and 1 to Texas A&M. I think Ole Miss is a better team here. And when you look at Missouri and you kind of look at, the way that they play, they are a team that it's kind of weird because, they shoot a ton of threes and they're really good at it, but it's not like the strength of their offense is they don't get a big ton of their points from 3-point range. They're just good at making them when they do take them here. I just have some concerns here about Missouri being able to keep up the hot shooting that they have. I mean, at some point, I think it's going to go cold. They have a deep rotation. They 43% of their minutes come from the bench, which again brings in a lot of variance that you can't really account for. And you also have to take into effect their coaching, Kelly, right? Like, how much do you trust the coach to keep the rotation of the guys who are hot in the games as opposed to continuing to go deeper into the bench? So, again, stay away game for me here. I lean Mississippi plus the points. If you're willing to swallow all that juice from Missouri on the money line, what are you about? Minus 180, Kelly? Minus 190, somewhere in that range?
Oh, no. I am not willing to do that, Mark. This is not a Missouri team that I trust enough to be laying that kind of juice.
Right.
I think if you like Mizzou, you like them early. I think if you like Mizzou, you play them in the first half. I would agree with you. Yeah. There's a couple of games today where I like the one team for the first half and like another team for the full game. And that can get a little convoluted, and I understand that. But just watching some of these pairings, that seems to be the best case scenario and how I can handicap. And sometimes it keeps me off a game. All right, Mark, anything else you want to touch on? We've got 15 minutes until tip-off. Let everybody know what you got over at WagerTalk as well. And then why don't you give out one of your premium plays for our loyal listeners?
Yeah. So interesting here. I would not lay 17 with Alabama. Take the 17 with LSU, as bad as they are. Again, Alabama right now, like when you look at them and what is up next, they got a game at Mississippi State on the road, a little bit of a look ahead spot here. LSU's bad, just way too many points for me to lay with the Crimson Tide. And it'll probably be lower scoring than you think, just because they don't have to push the pace against this LSU team. Arkansas, we played on them. They finally got a conference win here. I will tell you, I'm not laying points with Arkansas at home. However, Oklahoma is fugazi. They are a fraud. I'm not playing Oklahoma. I would try to money line Arkansas, money line it with something else out there. Like, I mean, really, if that's just kind of the way I would approach it. I think they're going to win the game, but because Oklahoma's fugazi, but who knows how Arkansas is going to react coming off that first SEC win. And guys, oh, by the way, when you bet on Arkansas, don't watch the game. You want to know why? Because
you want to kill yourself. It's awful.
I've seen terrorists shoot out of Arkansas. They cannot make shots. It is miserable to watch that team play basketball. Like, I've never seen.
Which is why I had Oklahoma on my list today, because Arkansas was so bad. I think a lot of us had Georgia plus the points at Arkansas. That was a bad beat, if you will. Plus 2 points. You should have landed on one. It is what it is.
So
yep, VR gave it out to me on Wednesday on Bet on it, and I said, you know what, I agree. That was infuriating, but more so because Georgia absolutely dominated that game. Arkansas was ice cold until the last 5 minutes of that game.
And there was like 20 in the first half. Like, I literally shut the game off. I'm like, this sucks. I'm done. I'm not even. Why did I do this to myself? Right? Like, that's kind of where it was. I was like, but somehow they fought their way back into it. But even down the stretch, watching the last 5-6 minutes, I'm like, do they ever make a shot? Like, it's unreal. They are so bad at shooting. So just don't watch the game.
Don't watch the game. I think you talked me off of Oklahoma enough. I'll say that much. I did have Oklahoma on my long list, and I think you talked me off of Mizzou enough, even though I may still consider Mizzou first half. Mark Zinno, you're the best.
Yeah.
I appreciate
okay. So no problem. I appreciate you. Free client play. I talked about it before. It's on my package, WT.buzz/MZ. I went over in Auburn and Tennessee. We got 140.5 here, 141. Still think it's playable there. I don't see why this doesn't push closer to 150 when it's all said and done. If it doesn't, that means Tennessee's defense is locked down Auburn, and Auburn certainly is not covering 5.5 because they're probably losing the game, right? So I think Auburn wins it. I just didn't want to lay 6 in this spot. So let's go over 140.5. Client play for you guys, 4% client play for me. Also, second 5% college best bet of the year. That is up on my page right now, WT.buzz/MZ. We cast our first 5% play, not last week, but the previous week. So we're back at it again. Late game tonight, out on the West Coast, 5% play, WT.buzz/MZ.
I love those midnight specials out there on the left coast. Mark Zinno, yep. You can catch him every single Monday through Friday with Brian Power on the Daily Wager right here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. Thank you guys for always hanging out with us through the tech issues, through the hostage situation or whatever Mark Zinno thinks I'm doing in the extra bedroom here. Appreciate you guys. We're here for you. We'll be back tomorrow. John Murray from the Westgate Superbook. We've got Steve Merrill coming in from WagerTalk.com. And of course, VR is going to be hopping back and forth from the steam room to come and answer all of your questions and provide you guys with some more sharp information. Hope you guys cash a lot of tickets today. I will have up all my plays on Twitter here shortly.